Cousins to the goal line, off the hands of the receiver, and picked off. It is Traven Howard who just came into the game. And a good return, pointing out blockers. There goes Brandon Powell, punter to beat, into the end zone, touchdown. Stafford for Beckham, open, touchdown. Stafford protected, looking for Kupp. He got loose from Mackenzie Alexander. And there goes Cooper Kupp down inside the 35 of Minnesota.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the East Coast Rams podcast. I am your host, Ashton Spencer, joined with my awesome co-host, Zac Mayer. How is it all going, Zac?
Oh, things seem to be going pretty well, coming off a Christmas break, got to spend some good quality time with the family, enjoying plentiful amounts of football, thanks to, all the COVID shuffling that happened last week. But, we did get a good, nice Christmas miracle, and the Rams squeaked out a win against the Vikings. It was definitely kind of a grit your teeth kind of a game, but it still feels good for the Rams to be victorious and now currently seated at the top of the NFC West and pretty much being able to kind of control their own destiny. Now, I know we'll get into more details about, the game itself, but how are you feeling coming out of this week's game and the Christmas break?
Yeah, Zac. I really thought this game was gonna go a different direction at a certain point in time, and most people did too. It was a really hard game to play just from the team perspective, and people have to understand this is a NFL pro team going in and playing off of only one practice, Zac,
Yeah.
last week or two, going in and trying to play a team fighting for their playoff lives. So let's start off with that. That's why you saw a lot of lackluster execution in certain plays and stuff like that, especially on offense, because offense is a lot harder to prep. There's no excuse. Anyone with a pair of eyeballs can see Stafford played bad. It was a bad game. For anyone trying to crucify him, slow down. We'll get into that a little bit more later. I think it's a little crazy. Just like the greatest of quarterbacks have bad days. You have to acknowledge that. But like I said, anyone with eyeballs can see Stafford was off for like 3 quarters. The play calling, Zac, I felt like was an issue at certain points in the game when you know your QB is struggling. Like you got to give them easy throws and you got to lean on the run game. And I felt like McVay for big chunks of this game just refused to run the ball, especially in the red zone. I'm like, how do you go seven plays straight, Zac, running or throwing the ball after you get like a nice 20-30 chunk yard run by Sony Michel? I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I can see maybe one or two. You have Funk in the back, giving Sony a little bit of a break, and so you're trying to mix things up and throwing in the ball a couple of times. And I get it. That's how the Rams have been for so many years. They've been more of a pass first offense, but really lean on Sony Michel, and we'll talk more about him and how he's had a great December. But yeah, really need that coaching to kind of be a little bit more even playing field throughout the whole game and not just, in bits and pieces of it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this isn't like a game against the Buccaneers in week 3 where you're only getting like a yard or two a run and you can throw it and you're getting big chunk plays every time and Stafford's on it and playing good. It wasn't that type of game. It was the opposite. We were struggling to find passing downs, and guess what? We were getting 9, 10, 7 yards a run. So it like I don't get why Sean McVay just refuses to do that some games. He gets so hard-headed and he just wants to throw. I'm like, it almost lost us the game. It really
Yeah.
did. Especially when you have to realize your QB's just off this game. It happens, and you have to work with that and work around that as a coach.
No, yeah, I agree with you, and I'm not sure if it's the fear of putting too much on one person. Yes, you're putting a lot on your quarterback to throw the ball, but the quarterback can throw the ball to 4, 5, 6 different people. When in the running game, really you just have Sony Michel. Henderson's, kind of back, but then obviously we all know he got injured throughout the game. Um, but really, you only have one. You only have one running back. I mean, you have
Mhm.
Funk, and that's great. But I feel like McVay is afraid that something's going to happen to the run game, and they'll have nothing other than the pass game.
hmm Yeah, I definitely see that point of view about the running back's health, but also again, it was kind of like a win in you're in playoff situation, and when you control your own destiny, it's like that Patriots game from last year. It's like when you clearly see Cam Akers can just run all over the field, let him run all over the field. And if injuries happen, they happen, and you have to work around that. I feel like playing afraid isn't the best thing all the times. I don't know. I feel like coaches get burned by that sometimes.
That's true, and Stafford does have stuff to prove. He has as much as the Rams. I think we're ready to move on from Jared Goff. I think that there's still things that they want to see from Stafford. Everyone knows he has a good arm. He can throw the deep ball. He has that accuracy that we want to see in a Super Bowl team. But we're seeing the moments where are we still getting the Detroit Lions Stafford um, and getting those inaccuracies fixed is something that we need going into the next couple of weeks, and then fulfilling the playoff dreams.
Well, I mean, really, with this inaccuracy, it's something that can be lived with. It's the bad decision making. And I think that's the main reason we moved on from Jared Goff, on top of his inability to kind of make reads. But the decision making, and we'll get into it more when we break down the game. And let's go ahead and start covering the highlights of the game, Zach, in quarter one. uh, so basically, the Vikings receive the ball, and it kind of ends up with a quick 3-and-out. And it was just the defense started off really hot. We end up going down on our first drive. Remind me, Zach. I don't think we have scored on many opening drives this year, if I
We
can
so
remember.
we started off. I believe we started off the first three games uh, with um, with opening drive touchdowns, and I think that's what really got the Rams motivated in kind of that fast and loose, where we were really excited to have Stafford. This was a new change, that we were driving the ball fast, we were throwing it down far, we were making those 30-40 yard passes. So I'm pretty sure in the first three games we were making those at least first quarter drives, if not the first drive that we had possession of. But it
hmm
started to it has decreased over the season.
Yeah, definitely the last 2 months we've struggled in the first quarter, and this was a nice change of pace. I thought our first quarter, Stafford missing wide open throws aside, it was a pretty well ran offense in the first quarter, and it just went downhill from there until the fourth. Um, Kirk Cousins, just getting stuffed most of the time. We get a touchdown, go up 7-0. Uh, and then I believe the Vikings go 3-and-out. We end up coming back and just getting a simple field goal. Then going into the second quarter, the Rams and Vikings end up just trading field goals. Weird squib kick, Zach. I don't know why we necessarily tried to do that, and if it seemed like bad execution. Maybe the idea was smart to try to run out of time, but it almost costed us a other field goal.
Yeah, I feel like I was just watching a game, and maybe it was the Colts game where they did that at the very end too, and they were successful in that, and I think that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to kick it so that the clock would start a lot sooner and run it out, but yeah, it was very unsuccessful, and I think that's where we have come to assume that our special teams is not great. This definitely this game, and we'll talk about it here in a few minutes. But this game definitely turned around special teams. I mean, Matt Gay, he's Pro Bowler. He's probably the best person we have on special teams. Um, but yeah, just he's good at kicking field goals and things like that. He's had some off days where he's missed kickoffs before, kicking them out of bounds and causing us penalties and things like that. But as far as like kicking field goals, he's been great. But let's just stick to game plan. Kick it off and let them start on the 20-yard line. I more believe in our defense than I do really our special teams.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense when you have 11 seconds to go in the game or in the second quarter to kick a squib kick. Especially because I feel like 11 seconds is large enough that, like, if they start in midfield, the chances of them getting a field goal is a lot higher than if they start at, like, let's say the 20-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know the actual analytics, but I just found that weird, and we haven't really performed on special teams outside of Matt Gay until
Mm-hmm.
this game. Um, and let's go into the third quarter.
Yeah, so the Rams get the ball back, or they get the ball at half. And then just 2 plays later, we get Matt Stafford's second interception of the game. And it just, we were already up 13-3, and it just seemed like things we're now falling apart even worse. And it felt like, yes, we were up 10, but man, once you throw that second interception, you just kind of felt like things were kind of, starting to go downhill. Luckily, the Rams defense holds, forces the Vikings to punt until 2 plays later, Stafford throws his third, and luckily his final interception of the game.
That was the one out of the sack, or to
Yes,
avoid the sack.
to avoid the sack. And, I've been listening to a lot of other commentators about it, and I feel like most people are like, just take the sack. It's better to take the sack than an errant throw or throw the ball away. I think those are the two things Stafford really needs to work on is if there is nothing, just throw it away. Don't try to make the heroic play.
Well, I think that's something he got conditioned to in line, like being in lines, because you're constantly being down, right? You constantly can't, you just can't take the sack. You have to try to make a play if you're going to win a football game. And I feel like he's a great QB and a great competitor in the sense that he wants to make a play every play, but you're on a good team. You have to be able to rely on your team. It's like just because you're having a bad day, you can't make it worse. And I feel like the Rams in the last 2 years have had a lot of games where they beat themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and you
And this
just
could have
can't do
been,
that.
yeah, this could have been one of those games too. And, it's lucky that in this situation, compared to the previous games where Stafford has thrown multiple interceptions, we were ahead in this. Typically, in the past, we were either tied or we're losing, and now we're even playing more catch up. So luckily, we kind of kept that 7 to 10 point lead to allow if Stafford makes those mistakes, that we're able to correct that on defense and it not affect the outcome of the game.
hmm And then after that, probably I'm guessing your favorite play of the game.
Yeah. So the Rams or the when it got intercepted, it did go it did go for a touchdown, so they did get points off of that. But then Rams came back out. Again, this is where um, again we're the inconsistency a little bit. The Rams went 3-and-out. They had a punt for the Vikings. The Vikings had a 3-and-out, and then they punted, and we had our first special teams big play of the year with Brandon Powell, which I feel like I've been watching him so closely on his punt returns, and he every week has surprised me, and I just kept feeling this was coming. But he got a 61-yard punt return to give the Rams, I feel like, the boost both the offense needed, and even more, like the offense definitely needed it, and then gave the defense even more of a boost too. And you know, yeah, that was my favorite play of the game.
hmm Yeah, I definitely 100% agree. And let's just talk about Brandon Powell right now, like BP as he likes to be called. I just knew he was different for a return game in Jacksonville. The second we had the ball, like I think he had a return to the 30.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean,
that
he should have got one then.
Well, I mean, it was just a 30-yard return. He had the
Yeah.
60-yarder later in that game, and I
Right.
was just happy. Like I would have been happy with the returner that can get to 25.
Mhm.
Zach, that's how bad our special teams has been for 2 years.
Yeah.
Especially our return game has just been inconsistent and just terrible. I think last year we were bottom in the league for like average starting position for drives, and BP just getting the 60-yarder in Jacksonville and now an awesome touchdown. I mean, kudos to him winning special teams player of the week. NFC is just he deserves it. It was great calls, great blocking by the special teams unit, just a great play all around.
Just remind me, was it this was the game because the games were so close from Tuesday to this game. Was this also the game that he was mad at Skorsky for uh,
Skoranek.
Skoranek for getting in his way?
Yes. Ben Skoranek got in his way, and had it touched Ben Skoranek, the Vikings could have retrieved it, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been Pal's fault at all.
Right, he was trying to get a fair catch of it, and he was mad after that. And so I'm just glad I feel like we finally found somebody who, it seems to be securing of the ball. He wants that position. He's earning the reps for that position, and I'm really glad we're giving it to somebody else other than putting Cooper Cup in the back. Again, I think we've all felt like that was the wrong move throughout the year, but we kind of get why you need someone who had the hands to catch the ball and know when to call a fair catch, when to run it back, when to let it go in the end zone for a touchback. And I think we finally found the guy we need to keep our special teams and, get our punt returns into the place that really a Super Bowl caliber team needs to be at.
hmm Yeah, it just gives you a better margin of error if your special teams is firing on all cylinders. And we started off rough this year outside of Matt Gay, and it looks like everything's trending in the right direction. Fingers crossed.
So after that, the Vikings do get the ball back. They settle for a field goal, and then our offense, finally gets back onto the field, and they march down 75 yards and 11 plays. Final getting Matthew Stafford a touchdown with OBJ,
hmm
um, putting us up to 27-13. Thoughts on that touchdown?
Uh, I mean, it was a nice read by Stafford, a great route by OBJ. We're lucky to get OBJ when we got, because losing Robert Woods, having depend on we would have to depend on like Benny Sko or Skoranek and a few of the other like backup wide receivers. It just we're really fortunate. Cooper Cup's great, but Cooper Cup can't be in all three wide receiver positions, right? Like he can't
Right.
be doing everything.
Yeah, and
And
especially with some of the stuff like when Higby was out and things like that, like we need the consistency. And even though OBJ is new and he's still learning the system, he's still a top receiver in the league, and
mhm.
he's a smart guy. He's been able to pick up the offense pretty quickly. I still think there's still some kinks, and we can talk about in the offense overview to work out. But that's just a thing that's going to happen when you're 6 weeks into a new team.
Yeah, Van Jefferson with a few drops this game. I think he only caught like 2 of 8, something of that range.
Hmm.
It just Van Jefferson has had great games, especially early in the season. Lately, he's been I don't know what's going on with him. His connection with Stafford just they're not on the same wavelength currently, and hopefully they can kind of patch that up. So after OBJ catches that touchdown, it's 27-13 Vikings. Vikings end up having a nice comeback drive where they score off of a Kirk, Kirk Cousins thrown TD to KJ Osborne. It's 27-20. this is one of those typical close Rams games, and
which
then
has
a
been happening
really.
more and more frequently.
Mhm. It's because they can't close and they can't like fully sprint away like they were against some teams in the middle of the year, before
Yeah,
our slide.
and I get it. When they had 6 minutes left, they had a 10-point lead, and I get where they're coming from. They're just going to run the ball, get through, take as much time off the clock as they possibly can and move it on. But we've seen, since the Arizona game, the Seahawks, and this game against the Vikings, where they're under 10 points and they have three really good quarterbacks trying to catch up in 10 points in about 2 minutes. And we've kind of seen each coach kind of do things a little differently. I think Kingsbury, did it the worst way, where you settle for a field goal after wasting so much time and then thinking you can score a field goal in, 30 seconds. Where in this one, I think it was a little bit better. They did go in and they scored a 44-yard field goal, giving at least the chance that even if they could catch an onside kick, which the Rams have not been great on dealing with the onside kick, but giving Kirk Cousins a minute and 30 seconds to kind of end at least go back and tie the game. Um, that's kind of my takeaway on it. But luckily the Rams, the special teams did hold. They were able to get on the ball. I think Van Jefferson was actually the one who actually
Hmm.
caught the ball and secured it for the victory formation. So at least that was the one play that he was able to kind of to get in on.
Yeah, Brandon Powell actually was in the victory formation too.
Oh yeah, I think they gave that to him. I think that he kind of like earned that spot to be in the victory formation because of his return touchdown. So that was really good. Kind of final stats. When you look at the game, it usually by looking at these stats that we'll go over, it almost kind of more favors the Vikings than it does the Rams. But the Rams did squeak away with the 7-point win. So time of possession, Rams were 30 minutes, Vikings 30 minutes. Turnovers, Rams had 3, Vikings had 1. Total yards, Rams 356, Vikings 361. First downs, Rams 22, Vikings 19. So it was actually pretty, other than the turnovers, which the Vikings won that one, it was a pretty close game as far as stats go.
Yeah, pretty even. Not the cleanest Rams game. We only had one penalty. That helps a lot. When you play clean football outside of like throwing picks and turnovers and stuff, it helps you if you're not shooting yourself in the foot, which the Vikings did a few times.
Yeah.
And if you can avoid that, it just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, and I think our defense just played a strong game. I mean, in our offensive line, and I guess we can turn over to the offensive highlights in quarter two. But our offensive line, what I would say, what kind of a mess that we were coming into this game. I mean, we lose Joe Noteboom, we lose Andrew Whitworth for COVID reasons.
And
Um,
Brian Allen.
Brian Allen went out, early in the game. So we had our center who's been playing well in the last 2 weeks. He was playing in a different position and then had to move back into center. We're switching mid game, left hand snapper or right hand snapper to a left hand snapper. Our tackles are alternating, trying to find the best fit. And so I think they played a clean game. No sacks on Stafford. Yes, there was some pressure which could have turned into sacks. So they kind of turned into interceptions instead. But still, they kept Stafford for the most part safe, secure, no sacks. Great job for them.
Hmm. Yeah, just the fact the offense can score 23 points. Um, Especially the way like the last 2 3 weeks have been, people don't understand how difficult it is to operate and perform at an NFL level, let alone with like having a third of your team go on and off COVID list. That's like so much shuffling, so much preparation taken away just trying to figure out manning. I can't imagine what Sean McVay had to go through. For all the grief we give him, he did a good job coaching the team to get to 4 wins throughout December.
Yeah, and again, going back to that offensive line, and kind of going through our notes, it's like again, this offensive line it wasn't broken, but we have that depth in there that allowed it to succeed. Having this offensive line, which didn't have its normal formation, and still allowing Sony Michel to go for 131 yards is amazing. It
Mhm.
means that we have that depth, we have that security that whatever happens kind of in between our own line, we have players that fill that position that can provide relief if someone needs an extra, extra two downs to catch their breath, things like that. So I'm really pleased in the offensive line, and then going into that, like I said, Sony Michel, 131 yards, 27 carries, 1 touchdown. I mean, that's an amazing stat for someone who was brought in to be RB2. They were not brought in to be RB1. They were brought in to support Henderson, and to kind of, give him relief. And he's now becoming RB1 throughout the month of December.
hmm Yeah, moving into offensive highlights, I mean, just like touch on the whole O line thing, like you were saying, Zach. I mean, people have to realize there were question marks going into the season about this O line. Um, but there's a reason why the Rams didn't draft capital in this position very high. It's because they have a lot of faith in them, and a lot of people were questioning whether or not that was a good thing or bad thing. And whether or not Tutu was a good pick or not, I gotta admit they were right. They have awesome depth, and the players they do have and have picked up have been fantastic. And you look at teams that have drafted straight O line in the first 3 rounds and that are struggling. I mean, like Zach, that's you see night and day difference. For example, the Dolphins, like their O line is a mess, and they've been just constantly pouring assets into that, and it hasn't worked out for them. Where we have really good talent acquisition, especially with the O line, and just got to give the coaches, Kevin Carberry, a big props to them. Like, good job on him. He's been coaching them really well.
Yeah, and I think also having that veteran player in Andrew Whitworth, I think that's brought a lot of help and kind of additional to that coaching, to kind of strengthen up, like Joe Noteboom and the rest of the team on just his insight. I mean, he's played in the league for so long, and he's always been a top tier offensive line player. So having that backing too, I think has been very important to this offensive line. It's hard to find those good teachers, those good people who are like, yes, let me show you this position, let me show you how to get this done. Very, very unselfish group there.
hmm Yeah, and he announced he's going to play next, or well, it didn't announce, but it seems like he'll play next year, which will definitely help out the Rams. Moving on, Cooper Cup having another 90 plus yard game. Just Zach, we're running out of things to talk about Cooper Cup. Just he's amazing.
He's
He's
amazing. I mean, he's still
yeah.
on task to win that Triple Crown, and I hope he does. This is a guy who deserves it the most. I mean, he's putting in it has to be he's putting in the most effort in this Rams players perspective. He's doing everything. He's working with Stafford on plays and designs and making sure that he can be the safety net if he needs to be. Um, Again, there's not a whole lot you can say. I mean, he needs to continue to be pushed into this MVP conversation. I mean, there are other players who I agree deserve that same kind of recognition, but to be the achievement that he is and the player that he is, he definitely stands out amongst the top tier.
Well, I will say this, Zach. I think he could do it just within the next game, because a lot of people forget this Ravens team has a very, very battered and weakened secondary. You just had a historic game thrown by Joe Burrow, and no offense to the Bengals, but we have a better air offense than the Bengals. We could throw for a good amount. I do see that as a possibility, especially if Cooper Cup goes off. And this could be a game where he goes off for 200 yards, possibly 300 if they just can't contain him at all. Like, you could see angry Stafford. Like, I feel like after his multi-pick interception game, Zach, he has played far better the game after.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I've seen that. I've seen his motivation, and he is one of those quarterbacks that even though he throws an interception, he even throws 2 or 3 interceptions. I don't think it seems to phase him as much. He may be still a little like quick trigger to get the ball out, um, but we still see. I mean, when the drive for the touchdown with OBJ, like he had good passing plays on that, and like Cooper Cup still had 109 yards. Like, he still. Um, he still can find his target. He can still put the ball exactly where it needs to go. I'm just looking for a little bit more consistency because yeah, you can have a game in the regular season where you throw 3 interceptions and still win the game. Um, but remember, if once you lose in the playoffs, you're done. So making sure that you're consistent when you're going in, and you're I mean, there's all likelihood now that you're not going to get the first round bye. So you're still playing, 4 games in a row. Um, and you have to be consistent on all 4 of those games.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree. That's something Stafford needs to try to hopefully get better with, and he will. Going into Sony Michel's great stats for this game: 27 carries, 131 yards, and a nice TD. He has been the top running back for yardage in December, even doing better than the stud down in Indianapolis. I mean, Sony Michel played a great game. He was doing hard running. He could have had a 200-yard game. He really could have. It just kind of got stopped because I believe most of those yards came on those 2 drives. It just outside of the 2 touchdown drives, he just wasn't getting ran clearly enough, and I no complaints by me. He was breaking tackles, being slippery. There was a play where he almost got off of his balance, but he confused a tackle or two and then just kept on shooting up for another 10 yards. So just a great play by him.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to get. I mean, I don't know if we've seen him get a negative yard play yet, but it's very hard for him to just get a 0 yard game. I mean, usually he's able to get at least 1 or 2 yards by just forcing his body forward. So yeah, he's played lights out in December. He clearly could be up there in probably top 7, maybe even top 5 if this is the way he was kind of performing the whole season. Just like Matt Stafford, just like OBJ. This is a new offense to him. He was coming in as RB2. He was kind of the force. But really, when they were looking for like breakout and speed, they were kind of leaning on Henderson for that, and for the pass game. So that's why Henderson seemed to be more because he could be in the running position or in the passing position if they want to adjust that way. And it seems like for the most part, Sony is really just the running back and the pass protector and things like that. We saw a few attempts of some passes to him, weren't very successful, whether that was Sony's fault or Stafford's fault. But there is that learning curve, and I give that to all the players. But Sony Michel has definitely excelled, I think, from learning a new process and breaking out and being this forceful train that we need just to push and push and push so that we can now try to do the play action, and to let Stafford kind of throw the ball to keep the defense from constantly knowing what we're going to do next.
Mm-hmm. So for our halftime, we'll go over some Rams news. Henderson and Ernest Jones have been ruled out. I believe Henderson is done for the year. Um, Ernest Jones, they said he might be able to come back during the playoffs, so hopefully we get him back. He had a great game until he left. And then Travian Howard, who came in for him, also had a great game. Greg Gaines broke his hand, but won't miss a lot of time. The great legend John Madden passed away at 85. We touched on it earlier. Powell won the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Congrats to him. It was a fantastic play. And then Akers is rumored to be getting some touches against the Ravens.
I wouldn't be very optimistic that that's actually going to happen, in my opinion. If I'm going to do anything, I'm saving Akers for the playoffs. Let Sony Michel run the rest of the show with Funk in the back to give him some break, but maybe you might see one or two touches, but I don't know if I would want to try to um, I don't know if I would want to try to get Cam in there so quickly.
I could see them doing something with him in the red zone. I really do. I think they'll do stuff that's likely not to get him hit. So I don't think he'll be running directly with the ball. I would be surprised. But you could see some trickery, like him line up in the wildcat and then him pass off a jet sweep to a wide receiver, something like interesting like that. It wouldn't surprise me, but it'd be impressive if he's just in the backfield to start with, let alone if he carries the rock or not.
Right. No, yeah. When you say that, I could see him playing that kind of, role of, another receiving threat out there. I could see him doing that. That would give,
Decoy.
at least good cover to Cup or OBJ, or, he has the speed, he has the capability of breaking away from tackles and things like that. So, I could definitely see him that, but yeah, for me, I just don't see him, grinding the ball like Sony does. I think he's going to be the lead back, and if it was me, I would save Akers so that you have two really good running backs going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Um, John Madden passing away, that sucks. I mean, that a part of life is like growing up and seeing people you look up to, eventually pass on, and he left a legacy, and there's nothing much to say besides he was a fantastic commentator, awesome coach, and one of the best to ever do it.
No, for sure. And the one grateful thing I think that can come out of this, I mean, it's hard to lose anybody, but seeing on Christmas Day, they had that big special for him, and him being able to be alive for that, seeing that special, being with his family, and getting to experience that, I think that's a once in a lifetime thing. A lot of people wait until after they're gone before these kind of documentaries come up and these special things. But that tribute to him. Before his passing, and him able to experience that and kind of get the feedback that I'm sure many players, coaches, broadcasters, across his network reached out to him, and he was able to have those conversations in these last few days.
hmm Now let's move on to defense, Zach. Our defensive highlights are basically that tip pass. I believe that was Darius Williams tipped the pass and Howard picked it off. Great pick. Saved us 3 points. Critical time in the game.
I mean, really, what a way to kind of um, solidify kind of that spot when Ernest Jones gets out, is you step in, and you get the tip ball for the interception, and able to run it out. So it's just great confidence in a player, and I think that really helps boost that defense, which um, we have to give props to Raheem Morris. I mean, he's took a team where I think everyone was fearful when he was coming in from the Falcons, and fearful that we are going to regress significantly without the Brandon Staley defense. And we have seen it at times, and we've seen like, what in the world is going on? Like, this just does not seem like the normal Rams defense. But I think the key is that they've made the adjustments. Um, in the games where they did lose and they seem to lose bad, I don't necessarily. If you go back and look, I think that there's phases in all three, the offense and the special teams, that didn't help the defense at all. Um,
Yeah, the only game I can remember where the defense was just completely atrocious was the first Cardinals game. That's the only one. There's been other games where, yeah, they go into soft shell coverage when I think they do it too early in the game and they get more conservative. And he like has people off the line of scrimmage by like 9 yards when it's a 7 yard first down marker. It's silly stuff like that that I understand why people get upset. But for the most part, I think he's done a good job. I think expecting number one defense is a little unfair. Uh, I think we have a better defense than it comes off to because our QB has thrown a little bit more pick sixes than normal
Hmm.
teams usually get against it. But for the most part, defense, it's been solid.
Yeah, I mean, we
Um,
haven't had the big explosive. I mean, we've had several interceptions by the defense, but we haven't had the big explosions. I feel like we had last year, where I think our defense was carrying a good portion of the point tally. Um, and this year we haven't seen that as much, but at the same time, it
it's been good in critical situations
it has
in
been. I mean,
getting three and outs when we need them or fourth down stops.
and they've seemed to be great on in the red zone. I mean, yeah, they've given up points, and that's going to happen. Every team gives up points, but when I was there at the Indy game, in the end zone, like watching them, and they were. I mean, again, this was week 2 or whatever, but they were holding them to the line. They were not letting them move between like the 3 and the 5 yard line, and they are so good when they are compact that I can see why they play soft coverage until they get to the red zone. Then they have that tighter coverage where there's not a whole lot of places to go. You're either going to get an interception, you may get lucky and get the ball, but like they're breaking up those plays like no one's business. So I think Raheem Morris is actually doing a great job. I've heard little rumors that he may get poached, but honestly, I think he's one of the better coaches that I think we have a chance to keep for a second year, which I think can only make the defense better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he would be worth keeping around. Let's kind of talk about Ramsey versus Jefferson and AD getting 12 sacks. Zach, how do you think Ramsey fared against Justin Jefferson?
I mean, I don't think you could really ask for any better. I mean, so looking at the stats, Jefferson had a total of 11 catches and 116 yards. Ramsey covered him 21 times total. Um, Only was targeted 5 of those 21 times. Had 3 of them were actually caught, and only for 24 yards. So of the 116 yards that Jefferson actually got, only 24 of those were against Ramsey. Um, so in my opinion, I think Ramsey won in that. Does that mean that our other cornerbacks and safeties need to do a better job? Well, yes, but this just proves that Raheem Morris has adjusted, and in the beginning they were using Ramsey in that star position and kind of blitzing a lot, but we know that Ramsey can take out a receiver, and if you take out the best receiver in the game, your chances of winning are significantly more because you're losing that explosive player.
Yeah, I hate seeing Ramsey pass rush. That's the stupidest thing ever. I
I mean,
just
I get
don't.
Ramsey wants to do it because he feels like he has that capability, but when you don't have the capability in the back to if we had 2 Ramseys and we had one blitzing and we had one covering the best receiver, no problem at all. But you don't have that, um, and so I think that they've corrected, and I think they've realized like if we want to be successful, we need to move to this game plan. And I think Ramsey's seeing that, and I think he's understanding and is willing to do that role that we've known him to be.
Yeah, I'm definitely not against trying it for like a few games or something. Like I thought it was an interesting idea. It just never clearly worked out because like when you blitz, you're taking a body away from coverage, especially a critical one, and that person ultimately doesn't have a single effect on the play unless that they either sack the QB or they block the throw. And so, like, if either of those things happen, they have to happen for you to have impact, and that's like chance wise is very unlikely. And so, like, why not just have someone like Troy Reader be doing that? Because he's just being a body to kind of cause chaos in the backfield. That's why you do that kind of pass rush. Not really to get the sack, because the chances you getting sack is very unlikely. Um, unless if you're very great, like if you're a team like Dolphins or Miami where you do it in a big enough like quantity, then it's a little bit different. But for our defense, we just don't blitz enough to kind of be that effective to it, for it. So I just found it silly, and I hope we move away from that. It was neat to try, and I think they've figured out it wasn't really working. And when you leave Jalen Ramsey out, like not in the backfield, the number one wide receivers see a lot more success.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So you want to move to our final quarter number 4?
Yeah, Zach, I am actually going to this game. It was moved to 1 p.m. Uh, Eastern. That kind of annoyed me. I had to find new parking, Zach, so that was not fun.
Oh man, yeah. I guess I didn't really think about that. For me, it's like, oh well, it's early in the game, so I don't have to spend all evening watching it. But yeah, if you're actually going to the game, that does kind of make some adjustments.
Yeah, because we're gonna go and look and do a few things around Baltimore, and we had to move around our entire schedule now. So that sucked. But besides that, it just it's going to be a little bit different moving it up. It's going to be warmer, which is better for the Rams. The time adjustment isn't as good. They'll be on what, 10 o'clock time.
Yeah, and I was looking at that. Sean McVay didn't really seem too phased when he was asked during the last presser. He kind of was like, "Yeah, the players are just going to get up, get ready, and we're going to play some football." Like he was kind of like, "Yeah, it doesn't really bother us. It actually seems more beneficial for us to, kind of get up and just get our day going instead of, waking up and trying to adjust to a few hours and then get started." He seemed more willing. Um, Not sure if it's also just because you're not playing at night anymore. You're going to be, I mean, because you're going to be in the Raven Stadium is an open air stadium, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So playing in the day, playing a little bit warmer in the sunshine, instead of playing at cold at night, it probably does have some benefits. Um,
I believe it'll be like in the 50s versus like it was going to be the 30s or 40s. So it's a significant enough change. It'll probably help us out a little bit more. Um, I will also say it's annoying because I was looking forward to us playing after the Cardinals Cowboys game, because that's like one of those ones where I don't know if I want them to win or lose. Uh, you know what I mean? Like if
yeah.
we beat the Ravens, then clearly like you don't mind if they beat the Cowboys, because if they beat the Cowboys, that means we have a good chance of getting number 2 seed. But then again, if the Cowboys beat them, then we clinch if we win.
hmm
So it's one of those. It's a win-win game. That's how I'll look at it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm always for the Cardinals losing so that the Rams can be victorious in the division. And so that's how I see it. But I see the reasons why for both sides of reasons why you would want, the Cardinals to win or not. But that also puts more pressure on the Rams to actually win against the Ravens. So I'm always for the Rams, trying to, clench that division slot to, solidify it. But, I'm agreement. I think it doesn't really matter either way for us as long as the Rams win against the Ravens.
hmm And plus, I want to kind of scrub away that memory of that 2019 game straight from my brain. Just completely, just bleach it.
Yeah, I was listening to some other podcasts, and I always forget about that game, and that was also the game that
There's a reason you forgot.
you forget, and then I got brought up that it's the same game that we had Weddle on our team as a safety, and he refused to talk about any of the things that the Ravens did, um, and you were just like, if this was in reverse, a Rams player on their team, which I almost feel like they did have a Rams player on their team. They would tell the secrets
Marcus
of.
Peters.
Was Marcus Peters there that same time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and that was
we
the other thing. And
traded him a few weeks before that.
yeah, and I think Marcus Peters, had to give some stuff away. Like maybe not, but that's the thing about changing it. I mean, you don't have to give every single detail, but like, help your team out. You're trying to win some games here, Um, so I don't know. Yeah, that game was a bad game.
Yeah, I hope for a competitive game, especially if Lamar Jackson is playing. Or I cannot believe it's not Lamar Jackson is playing. Um, I love that nickname for Huntley. I just love it.
Yeah, which he didn't play this past week, right?
No, he was out on COVID.
Yeah, and I haven't even heard much about him this week. Like, even if Lamar, like, I haven't heard much about Huntley playing, um,
I
but
would
yeah,
assume Huntley will be playing if Lamar isn't starting. I would assume.
yeah, I don't know if he's been back, if he's been activated yet, back from because he was on the COVID list. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's been reactivated or not. So keep an eye out on that.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I mean, it's gonna be kind of a threat, whichever one you get.
Yeah, also the Rams and Ravens arguably have the two best kickers in the league in Justin Tucker and Matt Gay. I mean, both had amazing seasons. Justin Tucker having the longest field goal in NFL history, and Matt Gay having the highest kicking percentage in NFL not NFL history, but in the NFL this season.
Yeah, I mean Tucker to me, even though Rams fan for life, but Tucker to me seems like he is the best kicker in the NFL only because of his distance kicking. We haven't really seen Matt Gay try to kick those super long goals, but it almost just seems when the Ravens need that last second 60 whatever yard field goal to win the game, you know we have all of our faith is in Tucker, and he's able to succeed in that. So definitely going to be a matchup if it comes down to you know 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean, Matt has kicked a few like 55, 56 yarders. I think his season high is 57.
so I mean, yeah, I mean he's been great for us, and I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't trade him for anything, especially given our last several kickers. So the Ravens are just kind of in this weird kind of they're 8-7. Um, just came off of they're on a 4 game losing streak. They're having these weird games where should we blame Harbaugh for their losses because they keep going for two when they only need one to tie the game. Like, they're trying to go for the kill throat at the last second, but never able to get the 2 point done, so then they just lose instead of try to tie and go into overtime. I'm not really sure what that game plan is, but it seems like at least a couple of our losses are Harbaugh's problem.
Yeah, he some weird play calling. I almost feel like he thinks it's the 2019 Ravens team, and he's like coaching like that's the team he has right now, and it clearly isn't. Um just
Yeah.
some weird decision making there.
So, so Baltimore does have, I mean, it doesn't feel like, I mean, it's not really a trap game because, again, the Ravens are actually a decent team as a whole. But, them coming from a 4 game losing streak, and we're on a 4 game win streak with some kind of, at least the last 2 games have kind of been kind of squeakers to get out of there. Hopefully with the Rams being able to, practice more efficiently and more often than they have been over the last, really almost the whole month of December, that gets their rhythm a little bit. And so I probably blame mostly the lack of practice for a lot of the mistakes that happen. But
Mhm.
I'm sure Baltimore has allowed the most passing yards, which is great for Stafford and especially for Kupp and OBJ and Jefferson. But they've also had the fewest rushing guards in the NFL, so that does pose a bit of a problem if we're trying to keep our running game up with our passing game.
Well, this is one of those games you'll want to run later in the game after you set up the run with some nice screen play, quick action or quick passes, a little bit of play action thrown in there. You don't necessarily have to be running great early to do play action. So hopefully they do stuff like that. I really feel like, Zach, this game could be. It's almost like the reverse of 2019, the last game we played against them, where it was a Ravens team kind of rolling, have on a win streak. Yeah, I believe they're around the same amount of wins as we are now, and going up against a not a bad a Rams team that was hit or miss for most of the season on questionable games, and you just saw the Ravens get blown out, and the Rams in 2019 got blown out a few times. Um, so it's very much of the same vein, just shoes on a different foot now.
Yeah, the going into kind of like the biggest threats that the Rams have. I mean, Lamar Jackson, if he is playing, he's kind of seems like the biggest threat that they have. I mean, his passing game is on point. He's their rushing leader with 133 carries, 767 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns, which is kind of insane. When Sony Michel has 168 carries and 728 yards. But on the receiving end of things, you would think you would have a wide receiver as your, number one receiving yards, and it is not. It is their tight end.
Mark
Um,
Andrews.
yeah, with 93 receptions and 1,187 yards and 9 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp actually has more yards and touchdowns than all three of their wide receivers combined.
Ooh. Um, but the true question, Zach, is how many times this season has Lamar Jackson faced Greg Gaines?
Ooh, I don't know.
He hasn't faced Greg Gaines yet, and
Yeah,
he's running over other defenses that don't have Greg Gaines. But we've seen Greg Gaines; he can catch a quick QB or two.
that's true. I
So
mean, I mean that guy's magic. I mean, he's magic feet. He can get after those quarterbacks for being such a big dude.
yeah, he's quickest play in the NFL. He'll keep that moniker after he catches. I'm sure he'll catch Lamar Jackson once or twice. I mean, he was hobbling in practice, so he might be hobbling Lamar to like Sunday.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at their injury report, and it looks like Huntley is out as of today.
Hmm. Well, we may be seeing either Lamar or Josh Johnson. No, I can't believe it's not Lamar. That's sad. I wanted to use that in our next podcast, but I won't be able to. Um, so Ravens have the second best red zone offense. That's with Lamar. Again, it all comes down to how healthy Lamar is because they may not be able to do RPO, and I feel like we've defended that pretty well this season, especially playing against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine in the red zone. We like I said, when I go back previous, I mean the Rams are so good in kind of a tight coverage when they don't have to play the whole backfield when they're contained within those 20 yards. Once they have the receivers locked up and they can't really get away from them, I mean, there's really nothing that they can do. So it's going to take Lamar's legs if he is in to get him to the promised land if they want to win the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Well, I mean, do you have any final comments before we wrap things up?
Nope, I'm gonna have fun at the game. If you guys at all want to see any pictures or anything like that, my Twitter handle is at RamFanAshton, and then Zach Mears at Zach Mears. So definitely hit us up and tweet us if you're going to the game. Send us pictures. Definitely want to talk about the game. I'll be live tweeting. We always message each other back and forth during the game. Either like eye rolls or like just crying if Stafford throws a pick six. So
Definitely. We want to see that the Twitter love out there. So, all right. Well, I think that does it for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. You can always send questions and feedback to us at feedback@eastcoastrams.com or hit us up on Twitter, like Ashton said. Let's get it done on Sunday, Ramley. All right. Horns up.
horns up.